It is the Talk Music Podcast. My name is Scott Cowie. It's been a long time, but we are back, and I'm joined by none other than, well, somebody that is a wizard. In my eyes, she is a genius. Kaki, I'm probably embarrassing you here. You can cover your ears if you want.
Yeah,
Sorry
I wish you would stop.
I'll continue. In fact, that's all I'll say. But this person is absolutely brilliant musically, but I've just told her as we were off air that I'm about to become a parent. So Kaki's going to spend the first minute or two of the interview just telling me everything that I'll need to know about being a parent, so I won't have to bother reading anything else. I just want to know everything, and I won't have to worry about anything else for the next few decades of my life raising a child. Talk to me.
Okay. You have absolutely no control over anything. And you need to let go of the idea that you're going to mold them and shape them and grow. They're who they are. They come out who they are. And you just, support that person. But babies are boring. Like little babies you're so in love with this like little worm that sleeps and cries. And it's strange because you didn't expect to fall in love with a tiny, squishy, screaming worm. But you will. And they slowly kind of get interesting. But you know what? Here's actually some advice, not to be too much of making too many jokes, but and this came from my therapist, and she said, you will not always like your child. You will always love them. But it is okay to go through phases, months, weeks, possibly years, where you sort of don't really like, you don't relate, you don't get into their activity, you don't really, and that's okay, because there's going to be times where you are like really, really on the same plane, and it will come and go. And that has totally borne out to be true. Sometimes I'm like, I can't stand the sight of you. And then other, phases come through and like we are inseparable. And I think that not many parents are honest about that, because it feels like, oh, I'm a bad parent. Like I've always loved my children no matter what. But there's definitely times where I like them, I like them a little bit less. And that's okay.
It's great advice. Thank you very much. And one thing that I've always really liked about you is your honesty. Like anytime that I've interviewed you a couple of times before, and I've really liked how straight to the point you are. And sometimes you unapologetically give answers that you think, well, you're kind of. Sometimes I feel that I'm always kind of asking a question. There's a kind of maybe a standard answer to it, but one thing that's always great about talking to you is that you always kind of give answers that, no, I don't actually agree with that. No, I don't actually think what everybody else thinks about this certain topic. And
yeah, well, it certainly, my big mouth has gotten me into trouble more than once, but hey, it's just, I'd rather be honest.
Has there ever been in your careers in music, like opportunities that have came about that you felt like, do you know what? I don't really want to take that certain opportunity because that doesn't really kind of suit me, even though it would maybe at a certain point in time, people will present it to you like, we'll put you in a bigger stage or you'll get a lot of publicity doing this. Has that ever happened?
Yeah, and a lot of time, I mean, I can think of some examples. For instance, I was invited to open David Byrne's tour. I mean, like a year-long tour. Back in like 2008. No, it was even maybe earlier. But I had my own record coming out, and I had my own idea of what I wanted to do and how I wanted that to look in the show. I wanted to be longer, and I turned it down, not because I'm a huge fan of David Byrne, and I certainly would have been amazing to have that, lengthy musical connection. But I felt like I needed to, express myself in a bigger way. And it was just a time commitment. Occasionally there have been sort of endorsement and activities where people were like, come and, show your face at this fashion thing. And I'm like, no, this is not, I'm not really, I feel like fundamentally I'm a musician's musician. I always have been. I'm not really interested in becoming part of like, you know, a larger, more amorphous culture, or, you know, being famous for being famous, or seen and whatever. Yeah, I mean, but the fortunate thing too is that whereas some artists, you know, you can get a glam team on them and they're like, they're transformative. Well, that's just not really, you know, fundamentally, no one's going to tell me how to play guitar differently. So all of the smoke and mirrors is not really ever going to work for this. Oh, you get what you pay for. You get what you see.
Tommy Emmanuel, Andy McKee, Kaki King. There's a selection in my eyes of musicians that are just respected. And sorry, I'm embarrassing you again, Kaki, right? But I'll try not to go too much into it. But
is this an interview, or you just needed to call and gush?
A little bit of both. Parental advice and gushing. It's all coming out. I think that there's, in my eyes, all our musicians want to be in that place where there's so many people that are like yourself that are just totally respected. Like every musician respects what you do and what Tommy Emmanuel does and what Andy McKee does and all these guys do. That must mean a lot more to you. Like you said, are you a household name? That possibly not, but that area where you're just completely respected by a lot of different musicians and fans, that must feel a lot better than being, like you said, in some sort of glam arena, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I think having longevity, having the respect of my peers, having a, you know, like at this point, a legacy is, it, you know, on the one hand, it certainly is a nice, you know, it's nice to look back and also look forward. But on the other hand, you know, if I had been a flash in the pan, I don't know that I would be happily married with 2 children, still doing a job that I love, you know. And I think too, for some people, you go up and then you can't really go down. There's no room to downsize a career that's really large. It may look kind of embarrassing, or it may just not work, or, you know, the scale of it sort of, you know, but for me, I'm very happy no matter what the size, no matter what the scale, or the, you know, the whatever the event looks like, or the gig. I mean, I love a dive, I love a nice stage, I love a theater, I love a festival, you know, it doesn't really matter. I've been able to do my thing. And frankly, I've had enough moments where it's been quite depressing, you know, where like you played at 400 people the night before and the next night you're playing to 8 and stuff happens. And so I think I've had enough experience just being okay with the ups and downs that I don't worry about them. You know, I don't fear them. So it's been, you know, I feel like where I am is a very nice sweet spot, and I'm not worried about getting any bigger.
You said you don't worry. You must have experienced everything there is to possibly experience when you're on stage about things going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, where do we begin?
Has it ever been, at what point did you just stop worrying? Because when a certain thing happened, you go, well, do you know what? There's no need to be nervous anymore, because after that specific thing just happened. Anything?
Yeah, I think that's certainly, you know, I think that look, you know, common things that happen on stage, you know, you break a string, I think the whole audience like has a heart attack, and you just change your string and you continue, right? I mean, it's really, you know, I think that I have to take care of the audience's emotional reaction more than anything. So you know, PAs have failed, fire alarms have gone off, people have fainted, people have gotten into fights, you know, I've dropped things that I can no longer reach. My pedal board's exploded once or twice. Amps have broken. I mean, really, like, it's all, you know, and I could have a very successful show and even have something like that occur, because that's the nature of production. You know, you're talking about locations and stages and equipment that may have been set up very recently or maybe very, very old. It's really sort of normal for technical difficulties to occur. And I think like every time another one happens, I'm like, well, I didn't die. And well, no one else died. And the fact is, like, as long as a giant light fixture doesn't fall flat, on my head, I'm probably going to be okay. And so you just really roll with it. But yeah, I've had my share of calamity, as does any musician that's played for 20 years. But really, I think nowadays, I think much less of myself and much more about sort of making sure the audience knows that it's going to be fine. That, the whole disaster or the PA going out or the lights, whatever, that, like we're going to get through it together.
That's a very good, the parent in you is coming out there as well.
Yeah, the mother bird.
So you've got some great stories, right? You told me this a while ago, but for anybody that recently, I didn't hear this interview, the connection with Dave Grohl, right? Dave Grohl's a massive music fan, right? Tell us this story. This is out of this world.
I mean, which part of that saga? Do you want the email story or the playing on stage story or playing on the record story?
I've got to have them all because I don't even know the email story. That's not even what I was referring to. So take it right back to the start. Okay.
So my recollection is that I got some grapevine of Dave Grohl wanted to contact me and was given my email address. And he wrote me the craziest email about he and I were going to form a band. And the name of the band was going to be the Star Spangled Ass Shredders. And I just didn't really know what was happening. It was just this very sweet, gushing, email about like how cool my music was. And I guess the whole Foo Fighters, I mean, they're such crazy music fans. I think they sort of found me on YouTube and we're all just, sharing videos. So, that really sweet. And then, but actually connecting with the guy in person, in reality, was just he was much harder to pin down, but he was incredibly enthusiastic about the band we were gonna be in together. Yeah.
So
then I came. Eventually, I was out in LA, and they were making the album Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace, and he said, I have this song, and he told me the story about these miners in Tasmania, and they were stuck underground. They could communicate with them and get them food and water, and they couldn't get them out. And they said, what do you need? And they said, we want Foo Fighters music. So they dropped down iPods with Foo Fighters records on it. So Dave Grohl promised these guys that he would like write a song and put it on his album. And he was like, oh, now I have to actually do this. So he said, I have a song I have to play you a song. And I thought he meant they're going to go, we were in a studio, they were mixing the record. I thought he was going to play the track. And he's like, no, I have to play it for you on guitar. So he started playing the song and I picked up another guitar and I started playing with him. So then we ended up a couple days later recording our version of that song, which is the Ballad of the Beaconsfield Miners. And I really thought that was that. And then I was invited to open the Foo Fighters Australian tour, which was crazy. And, when you're opening an arena show, it's really just tragic. They open the doors, they turn the lights off, and you play. I mean, there's 20 people filing in and you're already, 3 songs in. So the impact is there's really no, it's almost pointless, but you get to have bragging rights. But then in the middle of the show, he would bring me up like on their they had the stage and then the catwalk to the small stage. So we'd like go, I'd be walked out to the small stage in the middle of the arena. And I would then do this duet every night with Dave Grohl.
It's absolutely amazing. Are we ever going to see that band come to fruition? That's what I want to know.
Listen, if I can pin the guy down, I mean, I've already made merch, I've got a warehouse full of Star Spangled Ash Shredder t-shirts available. So, no, I highly doubt that, but he's certainly a fan and a collaborator of so many interesting people. And I was happy to be included in that group.
Well, save me a t-shirt, medium. If that's
Sure.
okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Got it. I'll make a onesie too.
Oh, that'd be cool. That would be cool. I didn't even know this up until a couple of hours ago. You were in a film with Robin Williams. Right?
Okay, well that's a stretch, but yes.
No,
yes,
I know
yes.
I know what you're saying, but we're going with the fact that you starred alongside Robin Williams.
Okay, right.
Give us a story then, Kaki, if you'd be so kind.
It's funny because I just told this story yesterday. I was asked to re-record a Michael Hedges song. Michael Hedges is, beloved fingerstyle, amazing, really creative, beautiful spirit. And he's dead. He died very young. Well, I mean, he died when he was in his 40s, but like tragically, basically. So it was definitely a questionable thing for me to do. Like, was I willing to re-record this guy's song? Because what they wanted to do, they wanted to make it look more complicated, sort of, stylistically look, sort of more like a Hedges crazy piece would. Mm-hmm. And so I had Michael and I had a conversation, in the beyond, and I did do it. And I thought that was kind of it. They wanted me to record myself playing it so the actor could then, they had already shot the movie. The movie was finished. They just needed to do these pickups. So I shot myself recording it. And then they were like, here's the thing. Can you fit into a 10-year-old boy costume? Because we really need you to come and do the hand doubling. And so, they reshot those parts of the movie where you just see the hands of the boy, and those are my hands on the guitar, and that's the track that I am playing, or it's the track that I recorded. And it does also star Robin Williams, which is I knew that, but I wasn't really thinking about it, because, you make these films over such a long period of time and in such disparate parts. And funnily enough, one of my daughter's best friend, her mother, we're very close, and she was his costumer. She was doing, Robin Williams tailoring and costuming for that movie. So she's like, "Oh, we worked on a movie together." This was years ago, before our children were even born. So there's always, some kind of funny connection.
That's absolutely incredible. Was there two songs that you recorded? Because I often wondered, there was one that the boy was outdoors.
There's the one that he plays in the church and the one outside. The one in the church was written by the composer for the film, and it's the main theme. It's just it's a take on the main theme. And I did re-record that, and and then I recorded the Michael Hedges remix as well.
It's absolutely incredible, because Michael Hedges, there's so many guitar players I've listened to, and that I've always kind of subconsciously, I think, been able to pinpoint their influences, or right, okay, that person's obviously a Hendrix fan, or they're a Stevie Ray fan. When listening to you, I've never been so sure. Was Michael Hedges, was he an influence on you?
Totally, but he was sort of for a lot of people, he's this God figure, and everyone else we're just below, and fair enough. But for me, he was one of a whole collection of guitarists that I was discovering around the same period of my life, and he certainly, obviously, stood out. And I felt, an instant connection with, the separation of the hands, because that was really, the complexity of what I was doing technically. But, like we all have a couple of misses in our careers. And he did this record that he was singing and doing more kind of, I don't know, like what I remember was like, kind of like schmaltzy fake drums. And I just didn't get into it, because it was, I thought, like, really, this is the guy they're talking about? But it was just one record on his journey. And so it was only later that I sort of rediscovered him. as a guitar player. So yes, while of course, and I listened to him growing up with my father, and those records were already always on his Wyndham Hill records. He was certainly in the mix for me, I would say.
Awesome. So guitar first for you, and then you move on to drums, is that right? And then back to guitar?
Yeah. Well, I played guitar when I was really young, and then in fourth grade, they started doing orchestra and band in school. And my parents said, well, can she play guitar in one of those? And I said, well, no, we don't have the music, but guitar is basically a rhythm instrument, so she might as well play drums. So I started playing drums at age 9. And then that continued, and I kind of, drums were much more of a social thing. It's really hard to be just a solo drummer. So I was playing drums in bands, and the guitar slowly started to be something I did just more on my own, because I was really fascinated by solo guitar, fingerstyle guitar, and the mechanics and the composition of all that.
You still play the kit?
Still play the kit. It's got it set up right over there.
Awesome. You playing your records at all?
Yeah, I played on all of them except Junior. There's the drums on Montreal. That's me doing a two drum kits overdubbed. Definitely on Until We Felt Red. Although John McIntyre, I don't know. I mean, but I've always done most of anything that's just percussion is pretty easy. And then, certain drum kit stuff like Bone Cans to the Castle. That's my beat. There was a lot of percussion on Glow that was on me. So, I still play the kit.
Do you think that's really helps with all the rhythm stuff you're doing? It surely has to play a part, right?
I think that fundamentally it's the separation of the hands that plays more of a role than anything. And just that, when you're doing things that are a little more complicated, that are exercises in drumming, it's really about this hand is over here and this hand's over here. And they don't have to be in sync. They can be independent. And so when you mesh it together, it all sounds really amazing, but one isn't necessarily, it's not like I, strum here and fret here and we have a sound together. And I think that's what I take from drums more than anything, is that, this hand has its job and this hand has its job, and, blended together, it sounds amazing.
It sounds great. Show us this beautiful guitar that you've got here.
Sure. This is my signature guitar. It's actually an earlier prototype. This is a different inlay. So this is probably from mid-2000s at some point. This may have been one of the really earliest ones because this fretwork I remember. But yeah, I had always played Ovation guitars, and I just wanted it to be kind of simple and clean and elegant looking. Yeah.
What tuning is this?
It should be D minor. Let's see. Yeah, it's like a flat D minor.
Shame to say, I just can't tune a guitar by ear. That's really bad, isn't it? But you?
No, I don't think so. I think it's I think I'm normally fairly out of tune because I rarely take the time. And they're tricky. They're definitely tricky. I've seen some really astonishingly good players not be able to tune, really not even know if they're going up or down when they're tuning. It's kind of fascinating where people's ear lies.
It's kind of weird because Jimi Hendrix, right? And I'm probably going to get dogs abuse for this.
Who?
Yeah. Jimi Henderson.
Sorry, what? I don't know this person.
He was always out of tune live. And again, yeah. I don't want this to be a bit...
No. I hear what you're saying, but he was always out of tune in his mind a little bit. I mean, let's come on. It was the 60s. Did we really need to be in tune? Yeah, I have a feeling that was a result of the atmosphere, let's say, than him being like, oh, I really need to get this, foxy lady super in tune. No, he didn't care. He was playing.
Do you know, it's interesting, as we mentioned Hendrix, I think he's the most underrated songwriter ever.
I agree. And producer. I mean, the stuff that he was doing in the studio was really, really like beyond, you know, ahead of its time. I mean, yeah, everything about him, and the fact that he was African American and, you know, was really basically working in London because that's, you know, where people were less racist. I mean, there's such a rich story to Hendrix, other than, it's funny how Hendrix has become like as if he's the legendary one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And or it's like when people need to name a famous drummer and they go Ringo Starr, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, it's like the most famous. And I think really what I think that his legacy truly is that he's inspired so many, and he, you know, and he really embodied that I can do anything on this. The balance, because he was crazy and he was fashionable and he was punk and he was, you know, his songs were sexy and glorious. At the same time, he had this technical mastery, and he blended that so beautifully and so well. And I think that, you know, a lot of people go for one or the other, and it's hard to get the both.
Mm-hmm. No, he's great. I think that there's, from that period of time, is obviously a magical time. I've got to take advantage of this opportunity as you're sitting with your guitar. What songs have you written within that tuning just now that you can maybe play a bit of, if I can tempt you?
I find open D minor to be really versatile, actually. So a couple tunes on Glow. Oh, that's actually the next version of the body. That's not a song. A song I forgot. Cargo Cult. And then one that I ripped off for myself. Oh no, that's not Cargo Cult. What else have I written? Oh yeah. Yeah, a few.
Absolutely brilliant. Bravo. So see, when you're composing, what is your process like? Is it different every time? Is sometimes you just sitting with the guitar as you're doing just now and you're just coming up with a riff, or do you get inspired by an event that's happened, something kind of from an emotional standpoint? Is it different all the time?
It's so complicated. I don't have the answer. If I did, I would have a lot more songs. And for me, it's like it has to start with a guitar. It doesn't really start with like going and finding. I mean, yes, I like to go and partake in the business of the world, and I feel very, you know, moved positively and negatively by everything around me. But that isn't really enough for me to run to the guitar. It's like the guitar itself has so much in it. And, you know, for me, playing it quiets my mind. So I try to play every day, even though I don't have, you know, a lot of time to commit that's quiet. And sometimes just playing a song that I've written before, or playing the same riff over and over. I think writing definitely for me starts really small. It starts with a tiny riff, even just a tempo, a tuning, a vibe, you know, it expands off of that. And I'm a big editor, so I'll write something knowing that everything about it's going to change eventually. So I try to, it helps me get out of that self-defeating thing of like, oh, that doesn't sound really good and you suck. I'm like, no, yes, this is bad, but I'll change it. So most of my songs have gone through lengthy years long process of really finding where they really truly sit.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. If there's an award for the person with the best song titles, it has to be you. Steamed, juicy little bun, happy as a dead pig in the sunshine. Can anyone who has heard this music really be a bad person? Hallucinations from my poisonous German street. It goes on and on and on. The best song titles. There's some of these songs that are so, some of the ballads, they're so moving and they're so, minor key and all this kind of stuff. And I read the title and it makes me laugh. Is that just the kind of, are you trying to achieve a happy medium there, or is there even that much thought into it?
Song titles are not my forte. So I either ask friends to name them and I just accept what they give me, or I literally like throw a dart at a page on the wall and just find the 3 words that make some sort of, and then occasionally there is a title that'll like, be very true to what's happening in my life, like doing the wrong thing. That was, questionable time. And, but yeah, I think also, it's hard to name guitar song. It's hard to name solo instrumental pieces, which is why half of classical music is, opus number 5 or symphony number 2. I mean, it's really much easier than having to come up with something that people will connect with. But I do think it's useful and it's a kind of fun creative exercise. And I think that maybe it's a bit of showing that I'm not taking this too seriously.
I like it. My wife is also a musician. Well, I'm a drummer, not really a musician, kind of musician, a little bit. And I said to her, "Oh, you need to check out Kaki King." So I was letting her hear your stuff and everything. And she obviously took a mental note and she got me this for my birthday or my Christmas or something. Check this out.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, I have one here too somewhere.
So to give us a bit of context, if you could be so kind to explain what this is.
I mean, in fact, I could probably set it up. This is a Passarel bridge. This is mine. That's Scott's. So I had seen several players just stick stuff underneath their guitar strings and make some cool noises with it. And I had been working on a record with David Torn, who kind of had something similar. And, but I think it was sort of more of a noise maker. So what I've done is I've loosened my strings and I put it underneath the strings on top of the 16th fret. So so you can automatically see it turns your guitar into this, a different sound entirely. And you can play on both sides. Anyway, but what I did with this, with my friend Rochelle, so Rochelle Rosenkrantz is a luthier that I made this with. And we really studied how to make it so it would be in tune. And the height of the bridge and the spacing of the strings when you sort of do this alteration, how to create something that will have a fifth. This isn't actually a fifth, it's at the 16th fret. Hang on. At the 16th fret, it'll have a perfect fifth, which we can all agree is a nice way to write music. Anyway, I'm doing this all wrong because I can't count. 12, 13, 14, 15. There it goes, 16. All right, let me show it for you for real. So if I tune that up to something that's proper, just sort of makes its own juice, you know. It really is really fun. And as a guitarist, you're taken completely out of your comfort zone, and yet it's still your instrument. You didn't go and drop another $1,000 on this. So I think that it's been a really quite fun thing for a lot of people to have. And you know, this is simple. You could make it out of a stick or a marker or anything. But again, that height and spacing has allowed us to stay a little bit in tune. How have you found it?
Good. I can't get to anywhere near to the point where I can play anything that I would say to people, "Hey, check this out," and let me rip on this. But overall, I've got a lot of work to do, but it's very, very handy, and I recommend it. KakiKing.com is where you can buy them, which is really cool. Now, first time I spoke to you, it was a year and a half, 2 years after the Glow album. And in like the album after that, I felt that you'd almost completely reinvented yourself, albeit there was a lot of very similar characteristics. But the neck is a bridge to the body. Tell us about this process, because this is just absolutely outstanding. And I think the touring and the general life of this album afterwards, the dates went a lot longer than maybe you anticipated. It was so successful.
Oh yeah. Well, the album is really the soundtrack to this very interesting theatrical show, where I take a guitar that is white and I use it as a projection surface, except it is only the guitar. So it's projection mapping. You only see the guitar lit up. And through doing that, it creates the guitar becomes this like magical window. And, it sort of the show goes throughout these stages and tells these stories. At one point, the guitar even starts speaking to you. And I, as me, become a character. So I'm also dressed in all white, and I have sunglasses on. And at the time I had, shock white hair. And it became this piece of theater. And there's also some technological points in addition to the projection mapping. I'm controlling at times. I'm controlling what you see through the guitar. So I'll play a note and it will trigger a very specific, movie or clip or color change or things like that. So it's a very live, vibrant show. My video technician performs with me, so it never is the same thing twice. So yeah, I made the soundtrack in order to have, I'll just say it, a marketing tool. Even though I do think there's some great songs on there, and I definitely initially thought it would I would play it 10 times and it would go away. And that show, I toured for 5 years. I mean, it was just astonishing, and all over the world. And we were able to do it again, like sort of it read well in a beautiful theater. It read totally fine in a small club. It was versatile for something that looked really high tech. We could squeeze it in just about any space. My wife was pregnant when it debuted, and it kind of took me through the childhood and birth of my two kids. And I'm really grateful for that, because it was, the pressure wasn't on to, make something really brand new right now and get the new album out and do, I kind of could sit with this project that was really, really captivating, and also do what I needed to do as a new parent. So, yeah.
Do you think you might ever go back to that if there's like an anniversary or an excuse to go out and do that again? Or is that done now, or will you revisit it in a different kind of capacity?
So basically, it's funny you ask. I'm continuing the research, let's say. I'm continuing the project. I think as it's a little bit of a time capsule. The images at some point are going to look very 2013 when it was made. It hasn't really been updated a lot. I did some edits and things that made it, a little shinier. But it's sort of, in 20 years it'll look like a shitty screensaver. Excuse me. It'll just look the way it looks. It'll look of the time. And so I think for that reason, I sort of like the idea of preserving it. But as far as projecting on the guitar, creating multimedia experiences, telling larger stories through that with the guitar, with the play, I think that it's very, very fun, very captivating. It's still new to me, even though it's been years, and there's still a lot that I want to learn, a lot of people I want to collaborate with. So I think that will continue in different forms. Yeah.
Could you tell us who you want to collaborate with? Is that a big secret?
No. It's really more visual artists, I mean,
right.
Like people who don't even have a real first name. It's like, a series of digits and emojis who create these crazy graphics on Instagram, stuff like that. Really, really working with, because, I think that a lot of times, and I've seen this very often, you spend so much time building the structure for your content that your content is like the last 10% of the work you do. And so I'd like to make sure that, between things that we're filming and things that we're, generating, or all of it, that relationship, and that, really taking a long time to create the right content, which is a super long period of time to create visual content. It's insane. Like, if you want a new mix of a song, you get it tomorrow. If you want a new edit of a crazy video, it's, give me 2 weeks. So anyway, it's a different timeline. It's a different work process, but I do want to sort of upgrade the look of everything.
I've kind of stolen a quote from you, and I kind of use it as my own.
Oh, yeah?
A lot of people like yourself who've got a big reputation as great guitar player and all the rest of it, you say that there's a certain type of audience that will show up to see you. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? The guitar police.
The guitar police.
So tell us about that. To be honest with you, if I was in a kind of situation where I had a reputation for being brilliant on guitar and people were showing up to see me, I would find that kind of quite intimidating. That whole thing when tons of guitar players are turning up to watch me and look at me like this with arms folded.
Yeah.
All the rest of it. Just almost praying that you're going to mess up. I would imagine maybe I'm being really horrible and unkind to these people.
No, it's hard to know what lurks in the souls of men, right? But there was always I'll say it. There's always a set of people, generally speaking, older men, who were pretty judgy, and they were almost always, early to the show, and I could be totally wrong. I mean, I think some of those guys were like really into what I was doing and really supportive and great, but there was certainly, I was like the kind of guy that would sort of lurk around, and then he'd go and write some scathing online review about how absolutely, terrible I was. And, but I think we kind of, it's like an inside joke, but we all know what it is when we say the guitar police. It's like someone that just refuses to have a good time, because they're just, no matter if they like it or not, they're just so like, they're so tense and focused on on something. And, I will say this, I have gone beyond the point of proving myself. I've also had like so many just utter disasters, that at this point it's that kind of human doesn't really, I'm old news to them. They've moved on to some other thing, or, most of the time the people, I'll say this 100% of the time, the people that come to my show are the loveliest, kindest, they're interested in listening and really taking it in, and they're generous, and I'm very just floored to have been to be able to create the kind of audience. And if I have an opener, as someone that was an opening act for years and years, it was always it was just dangerous, because you get up there and no one's listening, and you kind of you push through it. All of my openers, the audience is just totally there for them. And I really love that and credit them with being, you know, just so kind. And honestly, you know, anyone that's willing, I've said this all the time, but anyone that's willing to, you know, find a ticket, figure out how to, you know, take care of their schedule, get in their car, get in their train, whatever, get to the show and sit down and enjoy solo guitar for 90 minutes is kind of, you know, that's kind of a weird person. So thank you.
I'm always making the mistake when I see people that have advertised a gig in this time, and then I always make the mistake of saying, how did the gig go? Because more often than not at this point in time, gigs are getting cancelled with great frequency. So I'll ask with breath here. Last week, did this gig go ahead outdoors?
It did, yes.
Oh,
it did play a gig, yeah. So yeah, we've sort of ignored the elephant in the room, the COVID-riddled elephant. But so for the first time, I played to a live ticketed audience. It was outside. It was gorgeous. It was on the campus of Georgia Tech in Atlanta. And it was, you know, they did everything properly. Everyone had a mask on. They set it up in pod. I know you've done a lot more kind of pod seating outside in Europe that I've seen. They did it here. And there, of course, there's a lot lacking because there's a tiny audience that's spread over this massive area. So, but at the same time, we were able to connect, and I was certainly very rusty after a year of not doing shows, and everyone was incredibly kind, and it was really beautiful. It was really emotional. I was, I rarely get worried or nervous because this is just something I've done for so long. But I was definitely afraid of kind of failing in some amorphous way, and that didn't happen. And it was totally beautiful. And it's also kind of shows how much people really want it. And, are willing to sort of go through these complex ticketing and COVID regulations and, all of the stuff that we'd sort of rather not do. People are certainly willing to do it to stand 6 feet away from everybody else and see someone play music. So it was really heartening.
And a great reaction at the very end then, because that's the first gig that they've seen in person for such a long time. Because that's going to be such a big memory.
Yeah, absolutely. For us all. And I think that, as much as I have to become a performer again, people have to learn how to be an audience member again and what that looks like for the time being, at least. But I'll say this, in New York, venues are open. The venues that can are opening up, and you can't get a ticket. If there is a live event in New York City right now, I mean, a lot of them are really going the very, different regulations. A lot of them are just saying you have to be vaccinated. But you can't literally, there's so much demand and so little supply of live events that it's the hot tickets in town.
I always felt that there would be a resurgence to the extent where, as you said, maybe people don't realize how much they would miss it, that the absence makes the heart grow fonder and all the rest
I think that will be true. I think that every one of us is like, so sick of the screen. I barely even know what people's faces look like anymore, in real life. And so I think I think there's going to be a lot of rekindling of what people took for granted.
Absolutely. And you better not take it for granted, everyone, because Kaki's European, USA and mainly European tour, all the dates are on kakiking.com. You must be looking forward to getting out on the road. That'd be great, eh?
Listen, I am being optimistic. I'm being proactive. I am not going to do anything that is, we don't. The truth is, we really don't know. But I do have European dates confirmed, and I will be coming with a projection mapped, lit up, beautiful guitar and possibly a drum. And
nice.
And it will be from the latest album. And anyway, but the point is, I'm going forward as if, and if we have to adjust, we'll adjust.
Great. And maybe at some point we hope to see you in Scotland again.
I would absolutely adore to come back to Scotland. I don't even know what country you're in now, but I can't wait to figure that out. And those wacky work permits and all of that stuff.
Oh, crazy. Right. So tell us about the most recent album then, because you must it kind of got really affected by COVID. I believe you started it, and then you finished mixing it during COVID. How did it all come about? We
started on March 2nd, and coronavirus in the United States was like there was a couple cases. It was a whisper that was, but really it was not. In those 2 weeks were the 2 weeks that it went insane. Mm-hmm. And so I had done a show called Data Not Found, which is a very big, much bigger theatrical undertaking, which will hopefully eventually tour as well. And I wanted to, again, it was much like the next Bridge to the Body. I wanted to do the soundtrack. So I was recording the soundtrack with Chloe Thompson, who was the sound designer on the theater show, and her boyfriend, Arjan Miranda, and they have a studio down the street from me. And it was really easy and perfect. And it felt like, we'll record the tunes. No big deal. We're just, putting a mark on the tunes for the live show and making sure that those get, photographed, as I like to say. So COVID, as I said, was lurking, and we got through the first week of recording. And by the second week, it was dark. All of our shows had been canceled. I mean, those guys were like selling keyboards to make rent. A couple of days later, school got canceled. But again, it was still like 2 weeks to stop the spread. It was not, hey, everyone, we're shutting down for a year. So we didn't know what to expect. But yeah, we ended up just saying, listen, even though we've just been going back and forth a few blocks away from each other, let's just do this remotely. We finished the record, and that night Chloe called me and said Arjan has a really high fever. So we all got COVID.
Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, we're all okay, but pretty much we spread it around the studio. But really, I think something like a quarter of New Yorkers by that point, ended up having COVID in the spring because it was so widespread.
Well, there seems to be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and with the addition of, obviously, you were gigging last week, and I really, really, fingers crossed, touch wood, that those gigs will go ahead and things will be better moving forward. It seems that it's going to be a bumpy road still for a little bit of a long time, but hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel.
I think what I've learned is just to not, just to keep expectations within fairly low. Let's just say, just keep them low and be able to adjust and just hope for, and really it's all kind of hope at this point. There's really no maneuvering that you can do as an individual to change things. So that's where we are.
That's where we are. KakiKing.com, everyone. Check it out. Check out the tour dates. Guitarists, guitar police, get yourself one of these. Whatever you do.
Please.
Kaki, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime soon.
Sounds great.